Hello all and welcome to this quick video on literacy at Harrow Way. So we're going to start with this quote: every teacher needs to improve, not because they are not good enough, but because they can be even better. And we very much believe that as our mantra at Harrow Way. That is the heart of what we do, that we can always as teachers be better. And it's not because we're not good, but it's because we can always improve. And we always will make informed decisions about that improvement. So I'm going to start with looking at the Matthew effect. Now this is something that we will revisit constantly throughout our professional development at Harrow Way. And the Matthew effect is the idea that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And lots of research has shown that this is very much true when looking at literacy. What will happen is those who have good literacy will accelerate through that curriculum and get richer and richer in terms of their knowledge, so knowledge begets knowledge, whereas those with poor literacy will always struggle to catch up, and that gap just accelerates the further you get through school. So what we as teachers have got to do is we've got to try and tackle that gap. The reason for that is that we want all students at Harrow Way to be successful, and we have spent a great deal of time developing knowledge-rich curriculums. But unfortunately, if the issue of literacy is not tackled, the door remains closed to that curriculum, and we want to open that door to every single student. So I'll just share a quick example first. So the percentage of words needed to be known in a text for comprehension is 95%. So if we want students to understand a text, 95% is what we need to aim for. And I'll give you an example here. So this is a text with approximately 25% of the words removed. So a lot of teachers think that actually knowing 75% will get students through, and actually that's just not the case. They won't be able to comprehend it. So I'll give you a little bit of time to read that text, and hopefully what you'll find is it's extremely difficult to comprehend without knowing the words. So just before we look at some practical strategies that we use at Harrow Way, I just want to share this with you. So education is the process of preparing us for the big world, and the big world has big words. The more big words I know, the better I will survive in it, because there are hundreds of thousands of big words in English. I cannot learn them all, but this doesn't mean that I shouldn't try to learn some. And that very much is the case. Of course, we cannot teach every child every single word, but we would certainly not let perfect be the enemy of good, and we are going to work through a number of strategies in order to improve everybody's literacy. So the first thing that we would expect is that teaching academic vocabulary explicitly and clearly, and we very much want to emphasize this idea of explicitly. We don't want students to be taught tacitly, we want explicit teaching of literacy. So we expect teachers to have planned out their tier 3 words. We expect teachers to have planned out their tier 2 words. We expect they need to teach the synonyms and antonyms. We need students to gain meaning when we teach them new words. Just teaching them that word once is not going to suffice. We need to actually gain meaning to those words. Most of the research shows that you need to really have taught that word at least 8 times for it to stick, and that's very much what we need for it to stick. We would also want teachers to model the use of those words in sentences and through talks, so thinking very carefully. And finally, and with everything that we do at Harrow Way, we ensure that it is pre-planned into the curriculum. The curriculum needs to be the driver, so everything that we do needs to have been thought out beforehand and not ad hoc. Another thing that we expect at Harrow Way is for teachers to foster structured reading activities. Teaching literacy is not solely the remit of English. It is the responsibility of every single teacher. So we expect people to have planned out reading for purpose, so have selected appropriate texts. It's important when we select those texts that we pre-teach the vocabulary, and particularly the more complex words, because actually if we're going to deal with that text, we need to have thought about the vocabulary, and also the context will help gain meaning. We expect teachers to have planned appropriate questions to be asked. So what questions are we going to ask on a specific text? We then would like very much students to think carefully about higher level text. So academic scholarship is really important. So what subject specific text will you use to enable you? And again, this needs to be every single subject. Research has shown that maths or results in maths depend very heavily on your literacy skills. And again, ensure that it's pre-planned into the curriculum. At Harrow Way, we use Classroom Voices, so we know that it's really important that students have time to work independently in silence on a piece of work. However, we also know that it's exceptionally important for students to talk, and that's a really valuable skill, not just for later in life, but actually it helps develop a level of processing of information. So what we would very much encourage is that you have planned your vocabulary, what words you are going to feed into the lesson, that you give students opportunity to discuss. Now, we'd always recommend that this is done in a structured way. So Kagan structures such as think, pair, share are an excellent way to structure that talk. The reason it needs to be structured is that all the research shows that when doing effective talk, you need a level of accountability from all students. If you do a group task where some students are not doing that, then actually that talk has a limited impact. So we need to really think about structure. So rather than just saying to the class, oh, discuss this, it needs to have been thought out very carefully about how you are going to discuss that. And Alex Quigley in his book has got some excellent examples, things like ABC, that we will talk through with you as the year progresses. We also know that it's exceptionally important for students to ask questions themselves, because again, this will improve their level of processing. So any work done on Craig and Lockhart will show that actually the deeper the meaning, the better the understanding. So students should be given time to think about questions. And as always, ensure that it's pre-planned into your curriculum. And finally, we promote and scaffold high quality academic writing. This is exceptionally important, as with all those things. So what we need teachers to do is model what you expect from them. So always provide model answers. Students are on a spectrum from beginner or novice to expert. And all the research shows that particularly at that beginner phase, you need to show what good looks like. As students get closer to expert level, you will obviously remove that scaffolding. So one way is obviously providing model answers. The second could be potentially using a visualizer to live model a response. That way you can have a level of interactivity with the class at the same time. We would expect teachers to provide structure. So it could be through something like a structure strip. All writing is very structured, and actually as beginners or novices, again, we need to make sure that we are very clear on what we expect from students. And finally, we want it to build to something bigger. So start by breaking it down. Start by smaller tasks of writing and then build to larger ones. And in that process, and we have a very clear feedback system, we would expect obviously feedback to ensure that those students can work and develop on what they need to. And as with everything, ensure that it's pre-planned into the curriculum. So that was just a quick introduction on literacy at Harrow Way. What we will do throughout the year is we will keep revisiting these ideas, and we'll provide you with professional development to ensure that you can fully access all those things that we do. We also have a very strong team of lead practitioners who will be working closely with you in order to ensure that we, as we've said at the beginning, that we can always improve.